Imagine a lotus flower rising from muddy water. It does not beg the mud to become cleaner. It does not apologize for blooming. It simply rises above what tries to pull it down. Now imagine yourself doing the opposite, lowering your voice, lowering your standards, lowering your dignity, all for people who barely notice your effort. The Buddha said attachment creates suffering, and one of the most dangerous attachments is the need to be accepted by those who do not value you. In this video, you will learn how to rise like the lotus, how to stop shrinking, how to stop negotiating your worth, and how to walk away with peace instead of pain. 2. The moment you beg for respect, you lose it. Respect is not something you chase or demand from others. It is something you naturally carry within yourself. When you truly know your worth, you do not need to convince anyone to treat you well. The moment you start explaining why you deserve basic kindness, loyalty, or appreciation, you are already lowering your position. You are trying to prove something that should already be obvious. The Buddha never forced people to understand him. He spoke his truth calmly and let those who were ready listen. He did not argue with those who refused to see. When you beg someone to treat you better, you unknowingly teach them that your standards can be negotiated. You show them that if they ignore you long enough or disrespect you repeatedly, you will still stay. And once someone feels your boundaries are weak, they stop taking them seriously. People often test what they think they can get away with. If someone keeps making you feel unimportant, speaking to you without care, or dismissing your feelings, and you continue to accept it, you are sending a silent message that this behavior is allowed. You may tell yourself that you are being patient or understanding, but deep inside, you feel hurt. True patience does not mean tolerating disrespect. True love does not require you to shrink yourself. Self-respect means calmly standing firm. It means knowing that basic dignity is not something you have to beg for. When you stop chasing respect and start living with it, things change. Either the person realizes your value and adjusts their behavior, or they slowly move out of your life, and in both cases, you win. 3. You shrink because you fear being alone. Many times, you do not lower yourself because you lack value. You lower yourself because you are afraid of losing someone. You are afraid of being alone. Deep inside, there is a fear that says, if I speak up, they will leave. If I set boundaries, I will lose them. If I stop tolerating this behavior, I might end up alone. And because that fear feels heavy, you choose to stay quiet. You choose to adjust. You choose to shrink. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the main roots of suffering. Attachment is not love. Attachment is fear disguised as love. It is the fear of being without someone, even if that person does not treat you well. When you become attached to someone's presence more than your own peace, you begin to accept things that slowly damage your self-worth. You start making excuses for their behavior. You tell yourself they are just stressed, just busy, just going through something. You convince yourself that if you give a little more, tolerate a little more, love a little harder, they will finally see your value. But someone who truly values you does not need to be convinced. They do not need to be chased. They do not need constant reminders to treat you with respect. The fear of loneliness can make you accept emotional crumbs. You begin to believe that something is better than nothing, but something that constantly hurts you is not better. It is slowly draining you. When you stay in a situation where you are not valued, you are not avoiding loneliness. You are choosing a different kind of loneliness, the loneliness of being unseen, unheard, and unappreciated while standing right next to someone. Solitude, on the other hand, is not weakness. Solitude is strength. When you learn to sit with yourself without needing constant validation, you discover something powerful. You realize you are enough on your own. You realize your peace does not depend on someone else's attention. And once you feel complete within yourself, you stop accepting behavior that disturbs your inner balance. The moment you are no longer afraid to walk alone is the moment you stop shrinking. You speak calmly, you set clear boundaries, you stop begging, and something shifts inside you. You understand that it is better to stand alone in dignity than to stay somewhere you must reduce yourself just to belong. When you release the fear of being alone, you become free. And when you are free, you no longer lower yourself for anyone. 4. Over-explaining yourself is a sign of inner doubt. Have you ever noticed how some people make you feel like you constantly need to explain yourself? You explain why you made a decision. You explain why you said no. You explain why you changed. You explain your goals, your boundaries, your silence, even your growth. And after all that explaining, you still feel misunderstood. That exhaustion you feel is not because you are wrong, it is because you are trying to convince someone who has already decided not to understand you. The need to over-explain often comes from inner doubt. Somewhere inside, there is a small fear that says, "What if they think badly of me? What if they misunderstand me? What if they leave?" So you try to control their perception by giving long justifications. You believe that if you say the right words, in the right tone, with enough detail, they will finally approve of you. But the truth is simple. People who respect you do not require endless explanations. The Buddha spoke with clarity and calmness. He did not chase approval. He shared wisdom with those who were ready to listen, and he allowed others to walk away if they were not. He did not exhaust himself trying to win every argument or correct every misunderstanding. He understood that not everyone is meant to understand you. When you constantly defend your boundaries, you slowly weaken them. A boundary explained once with calm confidence is enough. Repeating it again and again turns it into a negotiation. And when boundaries become negotiations, people begin to test them. Over-explaining sends a silent message that you are unsure of your own decisions. It signals that your choices depend on their agreement. There is a difference between healthy communication and desperate justification. Healthy communication is clear and peaceful. Desperate justification is driven by fear. If you say no, you do not need a long story to support it. If you choose a different path in life, you do not need to convince everyone that it is the right one. Your life is not a public debate. The more grounded you become in your own values, the less you feel the urge to defend them. You understand that disagreement is normal. Not everyone will approve of your growth. Not everyone will clap when you change. Some people prefer the old version of you because that version was easier to control. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop shrinking yourself. Silence, when rooted in self-confidence, is powerful. It does not mean you are weak. It means you are secure. You trust your decisions enough that they do not need constant validation. You allow others to think what they want, because your peace is more important than their approval. The moment you release the need to be understood by everyone, you feel lighter. You speak less, but with more strength. You defend yourself less, but with more clarity. And you realize something freeing. Those who are meant to respect you will do so without endless explanations. And those who demand constant justification were never honoring you in the first place. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you betray yourself. Disrespect rarely enters your life in an obvious way. It does not always begin with shouting, insults, or open humiliation. Most of the time, it begins quietly. It begins with small dismissive comments, subtle jokes that cross the line, a careless tone, or someone constantly ignoring your feelings. At first, you notice it, but you tell yourself it is not a big deal. You convince yourself that you are overthinking. You choose silence to keep the peace. But every time you ignore something that hurts you, something inside you weakens. You may smile on the outside, but internally you feel small. The Buddha taught that awareness is the path to freedom. Awareness means noticing not only your thoughts, but also how people's actions affect your inner peace. When your heart feels heavy after someone speaks to you, that feeling is not random. It is your inner wisdom telling you that something is not aligned. Many people tolerate disrespect because they fear conflict. They believe that speaking up will create drama. They think staying silent makes them mature. But silence that comes from fear is not maturity. It is self-abandonment. Every time you allow someone to cross your boundaries without consequences, you are sending two messages. One message goes to them, telling them this behavior is acceptable. The other message goes to yourself, telling your own mind that your feelings do not matter. Over time, this silent betrayal damages your self-worth. You start doubting your instincts. You start normalizing behavior that once disturbed you. You lower your expectations just to avoid discomfort. And slowly, you begin living in a constant state of emotional tension, always adjusting yourself to prevent others from reacting negatively. True peace does not come from avoiding conflict at any cost. True peace comes from living in alignment with your dignity. The Buddha's calmness was not weakness. It was strength grounded in awareness. He did not allow others to disturb his inner balance. He understood that protecting your inner world is essential for spiritual growth. When someone repeatedly disrespects you and you continue accepting it, you are teaching them how to treat you. People learn your standards by observing what you tolerate. If you tolerate inconsistency, they will continue being inconsistent. If you tolerate disrespect, they will continue crossing lines. But the moment you calmly say, "This is not acceptable," without anger and without fear, you shift the dynamic completely. Setting boundaries does not mean shouting. It does not mean becoming aggressive. It means being clear and steady. It means valuing your emotional safety as much as you value the relationship. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is distance. Sometimes protecting your peace requires stepping away. The moment you stop betraying yourself for the sake of keeping others comfortable, your confidence grows. You feel stronger inside. You sleep better at night. You no longer carry hidden resentment. And even if someone walks away because you refuse to accept disrespect, you do not feel loss. You feel relief. Because in the end, losing someone who does not value you is not a tragedy. The real tragedy is losing yourself while trying to keep them. Not everyone deserves access to you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that being kind means being available to everyone. You answer every call, you reply to every message, you listen to every complaint. You show up even when you are exhausted. You allow people into your space again and again, even when they constantly drain your energy. And because you think this is generosity, you do not realize that you are slowly emptying yourself. The Buddha taught that wisdom includes knowing where to place your energy. He did not force his teachings on those who mocked him. He did not argue endlessly with those who were not ready to listen. He understood something powerful. Your energy is sacred. Your time is limited. Your presence is valuable. And not everyone is meant to have unlimited access to it. When someone constantly disrespects you, dismisses you, uses you only when it is convenient, or treats you like an option, and you still keep your door open without limits, you are teaching them that access to you is cheap. But access to you should be earned through mutual respect. It should be maintained through consistency. It should be protected by boundaries. Many people feel guilty when they start creating distance. They think, what if I seem rude? What if they think I have changed? What if they get upset? But growth always looks like change to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. When you start valuing yourself, people who were comfortable taking advantage of your kindness may become uncomfortable. And that discomfort is not your responsibility. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to not respond immediately. You are allowed to step back from conversations that disturb your peace. You are allowed to protect your mental and emotional space. This does not make you cold. It makes you aware. There is a difference between being compassionate and being accessible without limits. Compassion does not require you to sacrifice your stability. Love does not require you to tolerate chaos. Kindness does not mean you must entertain disrespect. When someone repeatedly misuses your openness, wisdom asks you to adjust your access, not your value. The moment you begin to limit access to those who do not appreciate you, something powerful happens. Your life becomes quieter. The unnecessary drama fades. You feel lighter because you are no longer constantly managing other people's negativity. You have more time for your own growth. You have more energy for people who truly respect you. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people are lessons, some are temporary, some are reflections of who you used to be. When you understand this, you stop forcing connections. You stop overextending yourself. You stop lowering your standards just to keep people around. Access to you is a privilege, not a right. The moment you understand that, you stop chasing people and start choosing wisely. And when you choose wisely, your peace becomes stronger than your fear of losing anyone. Your value does not decrease because someone failed to see it. One of the most painful experiences in life is giving your time, your loyalty, your effort, and your heart to someone, only to realize that they do not value it. When this happens, the mind immediately turns inward and begins to question itself. You start asking, am I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Why was I not appreciated? And slowly, you begin to measure your worth based on someone else's recognition. But the Buddha taught that your true nature is not defined by the opinions of others. Your worth is not something that can be increased by praise or reduced by rejection. It exists independently of how people treat you. The problem is not that you lack value. The problem is that you placed your value in the hands of someone who could not see it. Imagine placing a precious jewel in front of someone who does not understand what it is. They may treat it like an ordinary stone. They may ignore it. They may even step on it. But the jewel does not lose its brilliance simply because it was placed in the wrong hands. Its value remains the same, only the awareness of the person observing it is limited. In the same way, when someone fails to appreciate you, it does not mean you are lacking. It often means they are unable to recognize depth, loyalty, sincerity, or growth. Some people are only comfortable with what is easy, familiar, or convenient. When you evolve, when you become stronger, when you demand more respect, they may feel uncomfortable. And instead of rising to meet you, they may choose to devalue you. If you are not careful, you will begin to shrink yourself to fit their comfort level. You will dim your light so they do not feel insecure. You will lower your standards so they do not feel challenged. And in doing so, you will start believing that their blindness is a reflection of your inadequacy. This is where suffering begins. The Buddha's teachings remind us that suffering often comes from misunderstanding reality. Reality is simple. Not everyone has the capacity to understand you. Not everyone has the emotional maturity to value you. Not everyone has the awareness to recognize sincerity. And that is not your burden to carry. When you internalize someone's failure to appreciate you, you give them control over your self-worth. But when you understand that their perception is shaped by their own limitations, you free yourself. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop overgiving in hopes of being seen. You stop exhausting yourself for validation. The moment you truly understand your own value, you become calm. You no longer panic when someone pulls away. You no longer chase recognition. You no longer feel threatened by rejection. You know who you are, and that knowledge creates stability inside you. There is deep peace in realizing that your value is constant. It does not fluctuate with someone's mood. It does not depend on someone's approval. It does not disappear when someone walks away. When you stand firmly in this awareness, you stop lowering yourself for those who cannot see your worth. And the most powerful shift happens quietly. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they value me?" you begin asking, "Why did I stay where I was not valued?" That question is the beginning of awakening. Walking away is not weakness, it is awakening. Many people remain in situations that quietly destroy them because they believe leaving means failure. They believe walking away means giving up. They believe staying proves strength. But this belief has trapped countless hearts in environments where they are not valued, not respected, and not at peace. The truth that the Buddha's teachings gently reveal is this: sometimes walking away is not quitting. Sometimes it is awakening. There is a silent fear that keeps people stuck. It whispers that if you leave, you will regret it. It tells you that maybe things will change. It reminds you of the good memories, the laughter, the connection that once felt real. It convinces you that if you just try a little harder, tolerate a little more, adjust a little further, things will improve. And because hope feels comforting, you stay. But hope without awareness becomes self-deception. The Buddha taught that suffering continues when we cling to illusions. One of the strongest illusions is believing that your endurance alone can transform someone who refuses to grow. You cannot force someone to value you. You cannot inspire respect in someone who is comfortable giving you the bare minimum. You cannot build mutual love where only one heart is investing. Walking away is difficult because attachment feels like identity. You begin to believe that without this person, this relationship, this environment, you are incomplete. You fear the emptiness that might follow. But what you do not realize is that the emptiness you fear is already inside you while you stay. It is the emptiness of not being seen, the emptiness of not being appreciated. The emptiness of constantly lowering yourself to maintain connection. True awakening begins when you recognize this inner emptiness and stop blaming yourself for it. You begin to understand that the discomfort you feel is not weakness, it is wisdom trying to speak. Your unease is not overthinking, it is awareness. Your exhaustion is not sensitivity, it is your soul telling you that you are carrying more than you should. The Buddha left his palace, his comfort, and everything familiar not because he was ungrateful, but because he realized that comfort without truth is a prison. In the same way, staying in a situation where you are not valued may feel safe, but safety without respect slowly erodes your spirit. Awakening requires courage. It requires looking at reality without excuses. It requires admitting that some doors must close for your peace to survive. Walking away does not always mean dramatic exits or angry words. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is simply choosing not to respond anymore. Sometimes it is creating distance without explanation. Sometimes it is emotionally detaching before physically leaving. It is a calm decision that says, "I deserve better than this." It is not fueled by revenge, it is guided by self-respect. When you walk away from what diminishes you, something powerful happens inside. At first, there may be loneliness, there may be doubt. Your mind may question whether you made the right choice. This is natural. The mind resists change because it prefers familiarity, even when familiarity is painful. But if you remain steady, something begins to shift. You start feeling lighter. You start feeling clearer. The constant tension that once lived in your chest begins to dissolve. You begin to realize how much energy you were spending trying to hold something together that was already falling apart. You see how often you silenced yourself to avoid conflict. You recognize how much of your identity became centered around pleasing someone who barely met you halfway. And with that awareness comes strength. Strength is not staying where you are disrespected. Strength is choosing your dignity over your fear. Strength is accepting temporary loneliness instead of permanent self-betrayal. Strength is understanding that your peace is more valuable than any connection that requires you to shrink. There is a powerful freedom in knowing that you can survive without those who refuse to value you. The moment you realize you will not collapse if they leave, you stop being controlled by their approval. You stop negotiating your standards. You stop lowering your voice. You stop over-explaining. You stand calmly in your truth. Some people will call you cold when you walk away. Some will say you changed. Some will accuse you of being selfish. But growth always looks like rebellion to those who benefited from your silence. Awakening always looks like distance to those who relied on your availability. Their discomfort is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that the dynamic has shifted. The Buddha's teachings remind us that attachment to what harms us keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering. Detachment is not hatred, it is clarity. It is the understanding that love does not require self-destruction. It is the awareness that compassion includes compassion for yourself. When you detach from those who refuse to see your worth, you are not punishing them. You are protecting yourself. Walking away also teaches you something deeper about your own value. It forces you to sit with yourself. It forces you to rediscover who you are without constant external validation. It allows you to rebuild your confidence on a foundation that is internal, not dependent. You begin to enjoy your own company. You begin to trust your instincts. You begin to respect yourself in ways you never did before. Over time, you notice that the fear that once controlled you has lost its power. You no longer feel desperate for connection. You no longer panic at the thought of someone leaving. You understand that anyone who truly values you will not require you to lower yourself to stay. They will meet you at your level. They will respect your boundaries. They will honor your presence. And if someone cannot do that, you now have the strength to let them go without hatred and without regret. Walking away is not weakness. It is awakening to your own worth. It is realizing that you deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not tolerance. It is understanding that peace is more important than pride. It is choosing long-term dignity over short-term comfort. The day you decide that you will never lower yourself again is the day your life changes direction. You stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop convincing. You begin attracting people who recognize your value without needing reminders. You begin building a life that aligns with your standards instead of compromising them. In the end, you do not lose when you walk away from someone who does not value you. You lose only when you stay and continue betraying yourself. Awakening is not loud. It is quiet. It is the calm confidence that says, "I know who I am, and I will not abandon myself to be accepted." And when you reach that point, no one can make you lower yourself again. The day you decide your dignity is not negotiable. There comes a turning point in a person's life that does not look dramatic from the outside. There are no loud announcements, no grand speeches, no visible rebellion. It is a quiet decision made deep within the heart. It is the day you decide that your dignity is no longer negotiable. It is the moment you realize that no relationship, no friendship, no family tie, no workplace, and no emotional attachment is worth the slow destruction of your self-respect. For a long time, you may have believed that compromise is love. You may have thought that adjusting yourself constantly is maturity. You may have convinced yourself that enduring disrespect silently makes you strong. But the Buddha's wisdom teaches something deeper. True strength is not found in endurance alone. True strength is found in awareness. And awareness reveals a painful truth. If you must consistently shrink yourself to keep someone, you are not in harmony, you are in imbalance. Dignity is the quiet foundation of your inner world. It is the way you speak to yourself when no one is watching. It is the standards you hold, even when it would be easier to lower them. It is the boundary you maintain, even when you fear someone may walk away. When you compromise your dignity repeatedly, you do not just lose respect in the eyes of others. You begin losing respect for yourself. And once that internal respect weakens, everything else begins to feel unstable. The mind often resists protecting dignity because it fears loss. It fears being misunderstood. It fears being alone. It fears conflict. But the Buddha taught that fear is often an illusion created by attachment. When you cling to someone who does not honor you, your fear becomes stronger than your wisdom. You start prioritizing comfort over truth. You begin choosing temporary connection over long-term peace. The day you decide your dignity is not negotiable, something powerful shifts inside you. You stop explaining why you deserve basic kindness. You stop tolerating sarcasm disguised as humor. You stop accepting inconsistency disguised as busyness. You stop justifying emotional neglect as personality differences. Instead, you begin observing behavior clearly and calmly. You no longer romanticize disrespect. You see it for what it is. This shift is not about arrogance. It is not about ego. It is not about believing you are superior. It is about understanding that your inner peace has value. It is about recognizing that emotional safety is not a luxury, it is a necessity. When someone repeatedly disturbs your peace, ignores your boundaries, or makes you question your worth, awareness invites you to pause. Awareness asks you whether staying is nourishing your spirit or slowly draining it. Many people delay this decision because they are waiting for the other person to change. They think, maybe if I communicate one more time, maybe if I explain my feelings again, maybe if I give them another chance. Compassion is beautiful, but compassion without limits becomes self-destruction. The Buddha's compassion was rooted in wisdom. He did not attach himself to those unwilling to grow. He offered guidance, but he did not chase those who turned away. When you finally decide that your dignity is non-negotiable, you begin acting differently. You speak more calmly, but more firmly. You listen, but you do not absorb negativity. You forgive, but you do not re-enter the same cycle. You love, but you do not beg. Your energy changes. There is a quiet confidence that replaces anxiety. There is a stillness that replaces overthinking. At first, some people will resist this new version of you. They may say you have become distant. They may accuse you of being too sensitive. They may claim you have changed. And they are right. You have changed. You are no longer available for treatment that diminishes you. You are no longer willing to carry emotional burdens that are not yours. You are no longer willing to sacrifice your dignity to keep peace with those who do not respect it. There is loneliness in this transition, but it is a clean loneliness. It is not the heavy loneliness of feeling unseen in someone's presence. It is the temporary solitude that allows you to rebuild yourself. In this solitude, you rediscover your voice. You reconnect with your intuition. You strengthen your boundaries. You learn to sit comfortably with your own thoughts, without needing constant distraction. The more you honor your dignity, the more your environment begins to change. People who cannot meet your standards naturally drift away. This may feel painful at first, but it is purification. It is the clearing of space for healthier connections. It is the removal of noise that once distracted you from your own growth. The Buddha taught that attachment to what harms us keeps us bound to suffering. When you cling to relationships that require you to lower yourself, you are clinging to suffering. But when you release what disturbs your dignity, you create space for peace. You begin to attract individuals who respect your boundaries because you now respect them yourself. This is the deeper transformation. You are no longer seeking validation. You are no longer overextending to be liked. You are no longer afraid of disappointing others. You understand that disappointing someone who benefits from your silence is not betrayal. Betraying yourself is. The day your dignity becomes non-negotiable is the day your fear loses power. You stop reacting emotionally to every slight. You stop overanalyzing every message. You stop chasing clarity from those who enjoy keeping you confused. You begin responding from stability instead of insecurity. You understand that walking away from disrespect is not rejection. It is redirection. It is choosing alignment over attachment. It is prioritizing your spiritual growth over emotional dependency. It is trusting that any connection worth keeping will not require you to compromise your self-respect. This awakening does not make you cold. It makes you clear. It does not make you harsh. It makes you steady. It does not isolate you. It elevates you. And once you taste the peace that comes from honoring your dignity, you realize something profound. You realize that you were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong people. When dignity becomes your foundation, your standards stop being flexible under pressure. Your voice stops trembling when you say no. Your boundaries stop feeling guilty. You no longer apologize for needing respect. You no longer justify your growth. You no longer shrink to avoid conflict. And in that quiet strength, you find something greater than approval. You find freedom. When you finally choose yourself, everything changes. There is a moment in every person's life when they become exhausted. Not physically exhausted, but emotionally drained from constantly adjusting, constantly proving, constantly lowering themselves just to be accepted. It is the kind of exhaustion that does not come from hard work, but from silent self-betrayal. You smile when you feel hurt. You agree when you want to disagree. You tolerate when you want to walk away. And slowly, you begin disappearing inside your own life. For a long time, you may not even realize this is happening. You call it love. You call it loyalty. You call it patience. You tell yourself that strong people endure. You convince yourself that sacrifice is noble, but the Buddha taught that awareness is the beginning of freedom. And when awareness enters your life, it reveals something uncomfortable. You have been abandoning yourself in order to keep others comfortable. Choosing yourself does not mean becoming selfish. It does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you no longer love. It means you finally stop placing everyone else's feelings above your own dignity. It means you recognize that your inner peace is not something to trade for temporary approval. It means you understand that respect is not a favor others give you. It is a standard you maintain. When you finally choose yourself, everything changes, but not in the way you expect. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind questions your decisions. It asks whether you are being too harsh. It wonders if you should have tolerated a little more. This doubt is natural because you have trained yourself for years to prioritize others over yourself. Breaking that pattern feels unfamiliar. The Buddha spoke about attachment as one of the roots of suffering. Attachment is not simply loving someone, it is depending on someone to validate your existence. When you depend on others to feel worthy, you will always fear losing them. And when you fear losing them, you will always lower yourself to keep them. But the moment you choose yourself, you break this cycle. You shift from dependency to stability. Choosing yourself means you stop chasing people who are comfortable losing you. It means you stop explaining your boundaries repeatedly. It means you stop overextending your energy to fix situations that are not yours to fix. You begin asking a powerful question. Does this connection honor who I am becoming? If the answer is no, you no longer stay out of fear. This shift changes the way you walk, speak, and think. Your energy becomes steady. You are no longer desperate for replies, attention, or reassurance. You are no longer constantly scanning for signs of rejection. You are no longer shrinking your personality to make others feel secure. You begin to live with quiet confidence. At first, some people will not like this change. They may accuse you of being distant. They may say you are different. They may even try to pull you back into old patterns by reminding you of history, guilt, or shared memories. But growth always disrupts unhealthy dynamics. When you stop lowering yourself, those who benefited from your insecurity will feel the shift. Choosing yourself also forces you to sit with solitude. There may be moments where your phone is quieter. There may be spaces where certain people are no longer present, but this solitude is not punishment. It is purification. It is space for healing. It is room for your identity to rebuild without constant interference. The Buddha taught that true peace comes from within. When you finally choose yourself, you begin to experience this truth. You discover that your happiness does not depend on someone staying. You realize that your worth is not determined by someone's consistency. You understand that you were always enough, even when others failed to see it. This realization is powerful because it shifts your focus. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they value me?" you begin asking, "Why did I ignore the signs?" Instead of blaming yourself for not being enough, you begin taking responsibility for accepting less than you deserved. And this responsibility is not shameful, it is empowering, because what you accept is within your control. When you choose yourself, you also redefine love. You no longer confuse intensity with respect. You no longer confuse attention with appreciation. You no longer confuse familiarity with alignment. You begin to understand that real love does not require you to diminish yourself. Real love supports your growth. Real love respects your boundaries. Real love feels safe, not confusing. There is a quiet strength that emerges from this transformation. You do not feel the need to announce your boundaries loudly. You do not need to argue your worth. You do not need to defend your decisions endlessly. Your silence becomes firm. Your words become intentional. Your presence becomes calm. This is the energy of someone who has chosen themselves. Over time, your environment begins to reflect this inner shift. The people who remain in your life begin treating you differently. They sense your stability. They sense that your standards are no longer flexible. And those who cannot meet those standards naturally fade away. This fading is not loss. It is alignment. You also begin attracting healthier connections. When you stop lowering yourself, you create space for people who respect you without being asked. You attract individuals who value your time, your energy, and your presence. This is not coincidence. It is consequence. The consequence of honoring yourself. Choosing yourself does not mean you become cold or detached from compassion. It means your compassion now includes you. It means you no longer sacrifice your mental health to keep someone else comfortable. It means you no longer tolerate disrespect in the name of loyalty. It means you recognize that loyalty without mutual respect is imbalance. There will still be challenges. There will still be moments of doubt. But those moments no longer control you. You have experienced what it feels like to live without constant self-betrayal. You have felt the peace that comes from standing firm. And once you taste that peace, you cannot return to shrinking yourself. The Buddha's path was not about pleasing everyone. It was about awakening. Awakening means seeing clearly. It means recognizing patterns that cause suffering and choosing differently. When you choose yourself, you are not rejecting others. You are rejecting suffering. You are rejecting the cycle of lowering yourself for those who do not value you. This is where true freedom begins. Freedom is not found in controlling others. It is found in controlling what you tolerate. It is found in deciding that your dignity is not for sale. It is found in understanding that you can survive without those who refuse to see your worth. When you finally choose yourself, everything changes because you change. your standards rise, your fear decreases, your confidence strengthens, your peace deepens. You stop asking for permission to exist as you are. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop chasing people who are unsure about you. You begin walking away calmly when respect is missing. You begin staying only where your presence is appreciated. And perhaps the most powerful change of all is this. You no longer feel the need to prove your value. You know it, you carry it, you live it. The day you choose yourself is the day you stop lowering yourself forever. It is the day you understand that losing someone who cannot value you is not loss. Losing yourself while trying to keep them is. And once you fully understand that, you never go back. The peace you protect becomes the life you build. There is a powerful truth that most people realize too late in life. The quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of what you tolerate. Every time you allow disrespect, inconsistency, manipulation, or emotional neglect into your world, you are shaping your future. You are silently deciding the kind of life you are willing to live. And if you continue lowering yourself for people who do not value you, your life will slowly be built on compromise instead of dignity. But the moment you decide to protect your peace, everything begins to shift. The Buddha taught that peace is not something you find outside of yourself. It is something you cultivate within. However, inner peace cannot survive in an environment of constant disrespect. You cannot meditate your way into calmness while repeatedly allowing people to disturb your boundaries. You cannot think positively while tolerating behavior that makes you feel small. Peace requires protection. It requires awareness. It requires courage. For many years, you may have believed that keeping the peace meant staying quiet. You may have thought that avoiding conflict was maturity. You may have convinced yourself that sacrificing your comfort was love. But real peace is not the absence of confrontation. Real peace is the presence of self-respect. When you protect your peace, you begin to evaluate everything differently. You no longer ask, "How can I make this work at any cost?" Instead, you ask, "Is this costing me too much of myself?" This question is transformative because it forces honesty. It forces you to examine whether your relationships are nourishing you or draining you. It forces you to notice patterns you once ignored. Protecting your peace means you stop reacting impulsively. You no longer chase someone who withdraws attention. You no longer argue endlessly to prove your point. You no longer overextend yourself to win approval. Instead, you pause. You observe. You respond calmly or you disengage entirely. This calmness is not weakness. It is strength that no longer seeks validation. The Buddha often spoke about the middle path, the path of balance. Protecting your peace is part of that balance. It means you care deeply, but you do not cling. It means you love fully, but you do not beg. It means you forgive, but you do not allow repeated harm. It means you give, but not at the cost of your dignity. When you stop lowering yourself, your life begins to feel lighter. There is less emotional drama. There is less confusion. There is less anxiety about where you stand with people. You stop obsessing over mixed signals because you no longer entertain inconsistency. You stop replaying conversations in your mind because you are no longer trying to decode disrespect. Instead, your mind becomes clearer. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts of self-respect. When you protect your peace, you begin seeing people as they truly are. You stop projecting potential onto them. You stop imagining the version of them you hope they will become. You accept their actions as truth. And when someone shows you they cannot meet your standards, you believe them without trying to rewrite the story. This acceptance prevents unnecessary suffering. Many people suffer not because of what others do, but because of what they tolerate repeatedly. They endure cycles of hope and disappointment. They forgive without change. They explain without being heard. They love without being valued. And each time, they lower themselves a little more. But when you protect your peace, you interrupt this cycle. You recognize that respect is not complicated, effort is not confusing, consistency is not mysterious. If someone values you, it will show in their behavior. If they do not, it will also show. And instead of arguing with reality, you align with it. This alignment is freedom. Protecting your peace also transforms your relationship with yourself. You begin trusting your intuition again. You begin honoring your discomfort instead of suppressing it. You begin listening when something feels wrong. This self-trust strengthens your confidence. You no longer feel lost in other people's opinions. You are anchored within. And when you are anchored within, external chaos loses its power. There will still be challenges, there will still be disagreements, but they no longer shake your identity. You no longer measure your worth by someone's mood. You no longer feel desperate for reassurance. You stand steady because you know that your dignity is intact. Over time, the life you build reflects this internal shift. Your relationships become healthier because you refuse unhealthy dynamics. Your friendships become deeper because you no longer entertain superficial respect. Your environment becomes calmer because you remove constant negativity. You begin building a life that matches your standards. The Buddha's path was not about escaping the world. It was about interacting with it wisely. Protecting your peace is wisdom in action. It is understanding that you cannot control how others behave, but you can control what you allow into your space. You can control how long you stay where you are not valued. You can control whether you continue lowering yourself or finally rise. When you choose to rise, something beautiful happens. You begin attracting people who meet you at your level, not because you forced them to change, but because you changed. Your energy communicates your standards without words. People sense that you are no longer available for disrespect. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. The peace you protect becomes the foundation of your future. It influences your decisions, it guides your relationships, it shapes your environment, and most importantly, it strengthens your identity. You stop living in reaction mode. You stop constantly adjusting to avoid losing people. You stop shrinking your personality to fit someone else's comfort. You begin living intentionally. Intentional living is powerful because it removes desperation. You no longer feel like you must hold on to anyone at any cost. You understand that what is meant for you will not require you to betray yourself. And what requires self-betrayal is not meant for you. This understanding changes everything. You wake up with less anxiety, you speak with more clarity, you walk with more confidence, you make decisions based on values instead of fear. You begin to experience the kind of peace that cannot be shaken easily because it is built on self-respect. The truth is simple but profound. The life you build will always reflect the standards you set. If you lower yourself repeatedly, you will build a life of compromise. If you protect your dignity, you will build a life of strength. In the end, protecting your peace is not about losing people. It is about finding yourself. It is about choosing long-term stability over short-term comfort. It is about understanding that your worth is constant and your standards are valid. When you stop lowering yourself, you stop living beneath your potential. You rise into alignment with who you truly are. And the peace you protect today becomes the powerful life you live tomorrow. When you stop chasing, you start attracting what truly respects you. There is a silent habit that keeps many people trapped in cycles of disrespect, and that habit is chasing. You chase attention. You chase reassurance. You chase clarity. You chase apologies. You chase consistency. You chase the version of someone you wish they would become, and in that constant pursuit, You slowly lower yourself without even realizing it. Chasing feels like effort. It feels like love. It feels like dedication. But often it is fear disguised as commitment. It is the fear of losing someone. It is the fear of being replaced. It is the fear of not being chosen. And when fear controls your actions, you begin doing things that slowly erode your dignity. You text first every time. You apologize even when you were hurt. You explain yourself repeatedly. You try harder when the other person tries less. The Buddha taught that attachment creates suffering because it binds your peace to something unstable. When you chase someone who is unsure about you, your peace becomes unstable. Your mood begins to depend on their response time. Your confidence begins to depend on their tone. Your happiness begins to depend on their presence. This dependency weakens your inner foundation. When you stop chasing, something uncomfortable happens at first. There is silence. There is space. There is uncertainty. The mind may panic because it is used to constant movement. It is used to trying to fix, improve, or secure the connection. But this silence is not loss. It is clarity. Clarity reveals truth without effort. When you stop chasing, you begin observing. You see who reaches out without being prompted. You see who values your presence enough to maintain it. You see who respects your time without being reminded. You begin to understand that effort is never one-sided when respect is genuine. Chasing often comes from a place of insecurity. You feel like you must earn your place in someone's life. You believe that if you do enough, give enough, tolerate enough, you will finally be valued. But real respect does not require overexertion. Real connection does not demand constant proving. If someone truly values you, their behavior will reflect that naturally. The Buddha lived with simplicity. He did not chase followers. He did not force acceptance. He spoke truth and allowed those who resonated to stay. This is the power of alignment. When you stop chasing, you stop forcing connections that are not meant to last. You allow space for natural alignment to occur. Stopping the chase does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop overextending. It means you give effort where effort is returned. It means you no longer pour energy into empty spaces hoping they will fill themselves. It means you accept that not everyone who enters your life is meant to remain. When you stop chasing, you regain emotional balance. You are no longer constantly checking your phone. You are no longer analyzing every word. You are no longer replaying conversations in your mind. Your energy returns to you. Your focus sharpens. Your inner calm strengthens. And something surprising begins to happen. The right people step forward. When you stop chasing validation, you become more attractive. Not because you are pretending not to care, but because you genuinely value yourself. Confidence rooted in self-respect is magnetic. It communicates stability. It signals that your presence is not desperate. It shows that you are secure within yourself. People who respect you are drawn to that stability. On the other hand, those who only valued you when you were chasing may disappear. They may lose interest because you are no longer feeding their ego. They may try to test your new boundaries. They may attempt to pull you back into old patterns, but if you remain steady, they eventually reveal themselves clearly. Stopping the chase also teaches you patience. You begin trusting timing instead of forcing outcomes. You allow connections to develop naturally instead of accelerating them through effort. You let people show you who they are without trying to influence the result. This patience builds emotional maturity. When you are no longer chasing, you are no longer afraid of silence. You understand that silence is information. If someone values you, silence will not be permanent. If someone is unsure, silence will reveal that too. You do not need to demand clarity aggressively. You allow actions to speak. This shift protects your dignity. Chasing often creates imbalance. One person invests heavily while the other relaxes comfortably. One person worries while the other feels secure. One person explains while the other remains distant. When you stop chasing, you restore balance. You allow relationships to breathe or collapse naturally. The Buddha taught that suffering ends when attachment loosens. When you stop chasing, attachment loosens. You no longer cling to potential. You no longer obsess over possibilities. You accept what is present. And this acceptance creates peace. You also begin respecting your own time more deeply. You realize how much energy was spent trying to hold on to someone who was not holding on to you. You understand how many hours were lost in overthinking. You see how often you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own growth. With this awareness, you become selective. Not cold, not distant, but selective. You choose where your energy flows. You choose who has access to your vulnerability. You choose connections that nourish rather than drain. And as you become selective, your life elevates. Your conversations become deeper. Your relationships become more mutual. Your environment becomes calmer. You no longer feel the constant anxiety of trying to maintain something fragile. Instead, you feel grounded. Stopping the chase also strengthens your identity. You begin discovering who you are outside of seeking approval. You explore interests, goals, and growth without needing validation. You reconnect with parts of yourself that were overshadowed by the desire to be chosen. This self-discovery is empowering. When you no longer chase, you walk differently. There is no desperation in your energy. There is no rush in your decisions. There is no fear in your silence. You trust that what aligns with your worth will stay. And if it leaves, you do not collapse. This is the ultimate freedom. Freedom is not about controlling who stays in your life. It is about being stable enough to accept who leaves. It is about understanding that your value is constant, regardless of someone's choice. When you stop chasing, you start attracting what truly respects you because your standards are now visible. Your energy reflects confidence. Your boundaries reflect clarity. Your presence reflects self-respect. The people who align with that energy remain. The rest fall away. And in that natural sorting process, you realize something powerful. You were never meant to chase love. You were meant to embody it. You were never meant to chase respect. You were meant to live it. You were never meant to lower yourself to keep anyone. You were meant to stand tall in your worth. The day you stop chasing is the day your life begins aligning with your dignity. And from that alignment, real respect, real connection, and real peace finally enter your world. The version of you that tolerated less is the version that wins in life. There is a powerful shift that happens when you finally decide you will no longer tolerate what weakens you. It does not happen overnight, and it does not arrive with loud confidence. It begins quietly. It begins with awareness. It begins the moment you realize that the version of you who kept lowering yourself was not your final form. It was only a phase shaped by fear, attachment, and the desire to be accepted. For a long time, you may have believed that endurance was strength. You may have thought that tolerating disrespect made you mature. You may have convinced yourself that staying in situations where you were undervalued was loyalty. But the Buddha taught that wisdom is not blind endurance. Wisdom is knowing when to step back. Wisdom is understanding when something is disturbing your inner peace. Wisdom is recognizing when you are betraying yourself in the name of love. The version of you that tolerated less begins with self-awareness. You start noticing how certain people make you feel. You become conscious of the heaviness in your chest after certain conversations. You recognize the anxiety that appears when you wait for someone's inconsistent effort. You observe the way your mood shifts depending on someone else's attention. And instead of ignoring these signs, you begin honoring them. This is where transformation begins. When you stop tolerating what harms you, your entire posture toward life changes. You no longer approach relationships from fear. You no longer enter connections hoping to fix or prove yourself. You step into them with stability. You understand that respect is not optional, it is foundational. The Buddha's teachings emphasize detachment not as coldness, but as clarity. Detachment means you are not controlled by what you cannot control. When you tolerate less, you detach from the need to be approved by everyone. You detach from the pressure to keep everyone happy. You detach from the illusion that you must sacrifice your dignity to be loved. At first, this shift feels uncomfortable. You may experience guilt. You may question whether you are being too strict. You may fear losing people who are used to the old version of you. But growth always feels uncomfortable because it disrupts familiar patterns. The version of you that tolerated less understands something powerful. Peace is more important than popularity. Emotional safety is more important than external validation. Consistency is more important than intensity. When you begin tolerating less, you raise your standards naturally. You no longer entertain mixed signals. You no longer accept half-effort. You no longer excuse repeated disrespect. You begin responding calmly but firmly. You begin walking away earlier instead of waiting for complete emotional exhaustion. This protects your energy. Energy is one of the most valuable resources you have. When you waste it on people who do not value you, you weaken your focus. You weaken your growth. You weaken your clarity. But when you redirect that energy toward your own development, everything improves. Your confidence strengthens. Your goals become clearer. Your mental state stabilizes. The version of you that tolerated less also builds stronger self-trust. You stop second-guessing your intuition. You stop ignoring red flags. You stop rationalizing behavior that disturbs your peace. You begin trusting your inner voice when it says, "This is not right." Self-trust is powerful because it eliminates desperation. When you trust yourself, you no longer cling to connections out of fear. You understand that even if something ends, you will survive. You understand that your worth does not disappear when someone walks away. This understanding makes you emotionally independent. Emotional independence does not mean you stop loving. It means you love without losing yourself. It means you care deeply but not blindly. It means you give effort where effort is returned. It means you respect yourself enough to withdraw from situations that drain you. The Buddha walked away from comfort to seek truth. In the same way, the version of you that tolerates less walks away from temporary comfort to preserve long-term peace. You may lose certain connections, but you gain something far greater: alignment. Alignment means your external life reflects your internal values. It means your relationships match your standards. It means your environment supports your growth instead of limiting it. When you tolerate less, you attract differently. Your energy shifts. You no longer radiate insecurity. You no longer signal that your standards are negotiable. People sense that you value yourself. And those who cannot respect that naturally distance themselves. This natural filtering process is not loss. It is elevation. The version of you that tolerated less is not bitter. It is balanced. It is not angry. It is aware. It does not seek revenge. It seeks peace. Peace becomes your priority. When peace becomes your priority, your decisions change. You choose environments that feel stable. You choose conversations that feel respectful. You choose relationships that feel mutual. You choose growth over drama. Drama thrives where boundaries are weak. Growth thrives where boundaries are clear. The version of you that tolerated less understands that boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They protect your mental health. They protect your dignity. They protect your future. And here is the powerful truth. The version of you that tolerated less begins to win in life. Not because you are competing with others, but because you are no longer competing with yourself. You are no longer fighting internal battles about whether you deserve better. You are no longer negotiating your value. You are no longer living in constant emotional chaos. You become focused. Focus creates progress. Progress creates confidence. Confidence attracts opportunity. All of this begins the moment you stop lowering yourself. The Buddha taught that liberation begins with awareness. Awareness reveals suffering, but it also reveals the path out of it. When you become aware of what you have been tolerating, you gain the power to change it. And when you change what you tolerate, you change your life. The version of you that tolerated less sleeps better at night because there is no hidden resentment. It walks confidently because there is no shame in self-betrayal. It speaks clearly because it no longer fears losing people who cannot respect it. This version of you is calm. Calm is powerful. Calm does not react to every trigger. Calm does not chase every distraction. Calm does not beg for every ounce of attention. Calm stands firm in dignity. Over time, you will look back at the version of you that tolerated disrespect and feel compassion. You will understand that you were learning. You will realize that those experiences shaped your strength. But you will also feel gratitude that you evolved, because evolution is the ultimate victory. The version of you that tolerated less wins not by controlling others, but by controlling what enters your life. It wins by refusing to compromise self-respect. It wins by prioritizing inner peace. It wins by choosing alignment over attachment. And once you step into that version of yourself fully, you will never want to return to shrinking, begging, or lowering yourself again. Because you finally understand that your worth was never negotiable. And the moment you live from that truth, everything in your life rises with you. At the end of all these lessons, one truth remains clear and unshakable. The moment you stop lowering yourself, your entire life begins to rise. For so long, you may have believed that love required sacrifice without limits, that loyalty meant enduring everything silently, that patience meant tolerating what slowly broke you. But wisdom reveals something deeper. True strength is not found in how much disrespect you can endure. It is found in how firmly you can stand in your dignity. The Buddha taught that suffering begins when we cling to what harms us. When you cling to people who do not value you, you are clinging to suffering. When you shrink yourself to maintain connection, you are choosing attachment over awareness. But the moment you awaken to your worth, everything changes. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop explaining, you stop negotiating your standards just to avoid being alone. You begin protecting your peace. And once you protect your peace, you begin attracting alignment. Walking away from disrespect is not rejection, it is self-respect. Creating boundaries is not arrogance, it is clarity. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. The world will test how much you are willing to tolerate. People will test how flexible your standards are, but your future depends on the standards you refuse to lower. When you finally understand that your value does not decrease because someone failed to see it, you become unshakable. When you stop chasing validation, you become magnetic. When you tolerate less, you elevate your entire life. And when you choose yourself fully, without guilt and without fear, you step into a level of peace that cannot be taken from you. Never lower yourself again, not for attention, not for approval, not for temporary connection. The right people will meet you at your level, the wrong ones will fall away, and both outcomes are blessings. Because in the end, losing people who cannot value you is not loss. Losing yourself while trying to keep them is. Choose yourself, protect your dignity, guard your peace, and live at a level that never requires you to shrink again.